Hello, everyone, and welcome to our seventh episode of Back2Basics. As always, I am Moe ElHussini, and on Back2Basics, which is on the Business Edge brought to you by Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University, myself and Professor Elias discuss questions and issues facing business practitioners. We have been talking about the art of delegation since last week, and we are going to continue this interesting discussion today. So why don't I stop for a second and welcome George into the podcast with us. Hey, George, how are you?
How you doing, Mo? How you doing
I'm
this
good,
week?
I'm
You been
good.
up to
How are
good stuff?
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah, how are you doing? Good?
Yeah, pretty good. Ready to have some discussions on delegation again. I think last week was pretty good. We talked about the nine points. I know there's a lot of points, but we want to really walk through each little step to understand,
Yeah.
how that builds up, right?
Yep. Agreed.
That's good. So something that I've been thinking about since that last podcast is I brought up, an issue where I discussed in my professional career, my personal career, that I was having a hard time delegating, and my reaction actually was to stop delegating. And the reason why I shared that is I think other people have had that same experience. And for me, the reason why I stopped delegating was that I observed people not effectively supporting me, not doing what I asked them to do. And my conclusion was that they were the issue, right? And it's almost
that.
like, right? It's almost like professionally, it's like they were dead to me, right? I mean, they said some of them might have still been my friends, but why even go to them if they're not going to do what I asked, right? So my choice was to take on all the work and stop chasing after people. And I've talked to other people, and they're like, yeah, I've had the same experience. And I don't want to go over that previous episode and all that sort of stuff, but I want to clear up something that I said. And I said that when you're the leader, you are accountable and responsible for everything under your leadership. And I want to double down here on that, Mo. If you find yourself saying, I am so busy, but I don't have time to delegate, the problem is with your leadership. I encourage you to listen to episode 6, right? It's your leadership problem. So listen, Mo, it took me being thrown into the deep end to learn this lesson. It wasn't that the people I was delegating to were poor followers. It was that I was a poor leader, right? And if I had taken the responsibility for my lack of delegation skills earlier, my professional career would have been better, or at least easier. So if something's going wrong under your leadership, the problem is most likely with your leadership. Don't blame others. You are to blame.
Yeah.
And that's a tough lesson. I hope I'm not offending people out there, but I really believe it's the truth. You are the leader. You're responsible, period.
You know what, George? Are you done? I don't want to interrupt you. Can I make a quick comment?
No, please.
Okay.
Sure.
Look, to kind of confirm your point, or to tell you my point of view, piggyback off of what you just said, two things. A, you said that you blackballed the people, or that they were dead to you, or some other could say that maybe that person becomes he or she forms the stigma that they're not good at following orders, whatever the reason may be. People could perceive it different ways, and I agree with you 100%. What I think in general happens is that regardless of the reason or the reaction, meaning why I stopped delegating or how I react to that person not succeeding in what I gave them to do, right? Regardless of that part, I think people choose not to delegate because they're comfortable in what they're doing, and it's going to cause discomfort for them to break out from saying, you know what, I could just do this in 2 minutes instead of me taking 10 minutes to explain to somebody what they need to do, not seeing the long-term benefit of them actually training someone in the long run. But whatever it is, they say, you know what, I'm just going to do it because that's their comfort zone. And people usually, when they step out of their comfort zone, the first thing they think about is, let me run back into my comfort zone. A lot of people are not comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's kind of like when I coach, that's one of the main things I work with, helping people break out of that mindset, out of that comfort zone to go out and do the work. Point number two, or do what they need to do, I mean. Point number two, 2009, I think, or 2010, I interviewed for a job at a data analytics company, an oncology data analytics company. And the main reason, and this is 100% true story, there was a company in Plymouth Meeting in Pennsylvania. They were looking to hire somebody is because they wanted to replace a manager that had 8 people working under that manager, because that manager was super duper great at what they did. And the biggest flaw that manager had is that every time something went wrong, they took it upon themselves to take back that task and do it themselves. The director tried many times to work with that manager to tell her, listen, you need to hand over the work to other people. It's great and amazing that you're helping the team out when there's a problem, but you're not helping anybody. And the time you're spending doing those activities that you should be delegating, you should be doing something else that I need you to do at your level. So they actually got to the point, they didn't let her go. They moved her somewhere else where she didn't manage people, but they brought me in, and I did not know. My experience in oncology was very limited, but they brought me in mainly for that delegating and managing the team part, which opens up a lot of questions that we can bring up later in other sessions about, you know, what managers do and the difference between being a good manager versus knowing what it is you're going to be managing, right? As far as, you know, an industry, an area of expertise. But it does bring up the point that you said, delegating does matter. Knowing when to delegate, how to delegate could cost you your job. I'll leave it at that for now.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm confirming what you said.
It's a pretty powerful story, and I think you brought up a couple of good points there, and one I'll pull the thread on a little bit. I don't want to make it sound like my reason or my reaction is the only reaction people have. I agree with what you said about comfort zone. You know, maybe you're looking around and there's a lack of trained people or you know, something of that nature. And I would say those are all still a lack of leadership, right? If you're not comfortable leading, then that's a problem with your leadership. If you haven't trained your individuals to effectively do what they need to do, that's a lack of leadership. So, you know, I think it goes down to, if something's going wrong like that in your business, you're the leader, you're responsible. And don't
take the easy way out.
I guess it could cost you your job, and it can cost the business. So, yeah, wow. So Mo, that's a great point. Thank you.
Let's go into what we kind of like paved the way to, George, which are the warning signs. What are the signs, the red flags you should look for if your delegation is going in the wrong direction? How do you want to word it? The warning signs of what? What do you want to call it?
So I think we could even call it toxic delegation, right? I mean, right. So last time we outlined the 9 steps for effective delegation, episode 6. If you haven't listened to it, I encourage folks to go out there and listen to episode 6 and know what those 9 steps are. But if you're not essentially following those steps or a tailored version of the steps for your team, then you might be on the way to toxic delegation. And what does that look like? That looks like maybe picking the wrong people, or, you know, not taking ownership of it, or not explaining the whys, right? All those reasons in the 9 steps can lead to a problem.
Yeah.
So the next one I want to bring up, Mo, and I think this is a great one because I've actually seen this, and it's like I
Mm-hmm.
shake my head, man. I shake my head. Delegating to avoid responsibility or blame.
That one's a disaster any which way you look at it.
Right?
I mean, a
That is
manager that
terrible.
does that, yeah.
And
you know
it's
what's
crazy.
the first thing
I've
I think
seen it.
about? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I've seen it. It's like playing hot potato. It's like I know I have a problem, and I'm going to hand it to somebody else and wait for it to blow up. It's terrible.
And you know what I'm thinking, George? Like the biggest red flag I see in this is that it says so much about the lack of competence of the leader or manager who does that, because simply put, he or she does not even see the fact that the person that will screw up when he takes on this task is in his team. And if that manager doesn't see that, that would still be a poor reflection on himself. That says a lot about the manager. So he gives something over to one of his direct reports to do it because he does not want to get blamed for it. The fact that he does that, I think one of the red flags is that manager doesn't even see that this will come back to him strategically as the manager of that team, still responsible for the mistake.
And quite frankly, not only for that reason, but it's abusive to your subordinates. Like you're setting them up for failure. I mean, every which way I look at that, it's just wrong.
And I think it links to the next one, delegating the undesirable job just because you don't want to do something. What if it's critical? What if it requires something at your level of expertise? You should not give it to someone that reports to you, that's not ready yet to take it on. It's demotivating, it's demoralizing, it's negative in many ways.
It's negative and it's selfish, right? So just in general, you as a leader, you should actually be the most unselfish person part of the team, right? You're trying to make the whole team work, not just, I don't know. And this leads into the next one, not just punishing somebody else with an undesirable job, because that's essentially what you're doing. You're punishing them either for some reason, or just punishing them because they're not the leader.
Yeah, you're abusing your power.
Absolutely. So the next one, we've teased it a little bit, is delegating as a punishment or to teach someone or the team a lesson. That's like saying, that's like saying to them, oh, you think you can do it? Fine, go take a crack at it.
Yeah, it's not a cards game, or you're not playing some activity in a yard where you can, not care about the consequences of that action. This is at work, and the fact that you think that this would be a lesson learned, like you put it. I mean, do you know the consequences of that decision as a manager? Do you know the repercussions of giving it to them if it does fail? What it will look like on you, in front of your manager, in front of your director, right? It's one thing to try to make a point, but it's a whole other game to try to make a point without measuring or anticipating the consequences of it failing. Right? Making a point is one thing, but giving them something, like you said, as a punishment, it's too risky, and it has too many negative implications as far as morale, as far as the lesson learned behind it. I think that managers should just steer away from this.
The problem with these so far, and it just occurs to me that when you do this to your team, why would they want to follow you the next time? It's not just about that individual act. It's about the way you're setting the tone for the team and the way they see you as a leader.
And you know what? They may have to follow you no matter what if they're stuck with you, but they're not going to trust you. They're not going to feel comfortable working with you, which goes back to our motivational episode a couple of episodes ago, talking about trust and comfort working with the manager or the leader. And me and you went back and forth on this. But no matter if we want to call it trust, we want to call it comfortable, we want to call it safe, that's going to be gone. You do that one time and you're the one that's going to be stuck with the stigma as being this abusive manager. It's going to take a long time for that to go away, to erase that.
Yeah. So how about this one, Mo? I think this is interesting. Delegating without conveying authority or empowerment or emancipation for that individual. It's
what do you mean by that?
Giving them a job. That's like for instance, if you delegate a job to an individual or the team, and you don't make it clear to the other stakeholders that are involved that task was specifically delegated, and they're constantly frustrated because you didn't convey the appropriate level of authority or empowerment for them to be successful.
Yeah. Can you think of an example where this would apply, George? I'm trying to think of something where I can use it to link or relate to this.
So I'll give you an example, right? So and it's hard to come up with a very, very specific one, but I'll
No,
tell
it's
you.
okay.
All right,
Yeah.
George, so I'll get, somebody says, George, they're tasking me. George, I need you to go down and grab this. I need you to do the paperwork, and then I need you to pick it up and bring it back. Then when I go there, I find out that I don't have the correct signature authority. I don't have the correct credentials. I don't have what I need to pick up that task, because that person that delegated that task to me didn't let the people know that I was the one who was supposed to pick it up, right? It's like a form of not supporting the group or supporting the person you're delegating to with what they needed to perform the task. So it's like you're giving them, go do it, you're telling them to go do it, but when they go to do it, they can't because they don't have the right level of credentials or authority in order to get the task done.
Thank you for the example. And that brings up two main points we should think of as a leader. 1A, do the prep work before you delegate, right? Do the prep work to make sure that what you delegate will run smoothly. Because B, the confusion, which could take a lot more time on your end than it should have if you prepped properly, is, let's say you're my manager, George, and you gave me that exact same situation, right? Mo, go do this, A, B, C, D, and I go and I find out that my badge does not give me clearance, my security clearance does not qualify me, whatever the reason may be, I am not equipped to execute on what you asked me to do. First thing that's going to take 80% of my time is me, based upon my personality type, thinking that it's my fault. It's something that I will be blamed for, and it's maybe a test, something that I should actually try to resolve myself. When absolutely that is not the case. But some employees, especially the ones that get nervous quickly or question themselves quickly or have that seed of doubt in them all the time, what if George is testing me? What if there is something that I really need to do to solve this? And I spend my time spinning, running around in circles, spending an hour on something that should have taken less than 5 minutes, because I'm scared to go back to my manager and say, hey, is there something missing here? Do you know what I mean, George? Right? Like that whole mental mindset part could drain many, many, many minutes that are wasted on nothing.
I completely agree with you. Let me give you another simple example. It's as simple as this. We're both professors. We get a guest speaker to come in to take over the class for one of the sessions, and we don't tell the class that there's going to be a guest speaker and that we're not going to be there for that class. Just to give you an example, why would the students trust or know that they should stay and listen to this individual? Right? I mean, it's just, when you don't communicate, you don't convey what's going to happen to the rest of the team, to the rest of the stakeholders, it's a problem. That's your responsibility as a leader to make sure that that task happens as good as it can be.
Agreed. Good. Very good. Let's look at the next one.
Sure. So the next one is delegating with appropriate trust or respect. right? So that's kind of hard to see, right? But that's kind of like you're still delegating to them. You're conveying maybe with your words that you're going to trust them with this task, but inside your heart, you really don't trust them, or maybe you don't respect them enough to carry through and be successful. Then I would ask, why are you delegating that task? Is it because you think you have to? Right? You need to get yourself right in order to be able to convey the right attitude to your delegate.
Yeah, and the big part is too, if your delegate is someone that is high on emotional intelligence and knows how to read people, they're going to read in your interaction with them that there's a lack of something. And they're not going to understand why you're having doubt or why you're questioning it or why you're too nervous to give them something to do, right? That confidence will be, or lack of confidence will be projected in what we talked about before when it comes to micromanaging, when it comes to having full control, less control, and so on. That will interact very much with this point, depending on the level of trust that you should have.
So here's another one. Accepting an imbalance of tasking in the team, including you. Either you're taking on the task, or maybe you're not taking any task, or maybe certain people that you have as favorites because they're good are always getting the task, and people that are a little slower are not getting tasked as much. It's creating imbalance in the team. It's kind of toxic. What do you say, Mo?
Yeah, no, I agree. And on the other hand, it could be the situation that I was interviewed for, right? Where, you know what, I'm taking everything for myself, right? So it could be, yes, like you said, this is my favorite. I'm going to give him things that will make him or her shine, right? I'm delegating the key tasks that will make that person shine and look like a hero versus someone else that I'm going to give them all the menial, insignificant work that will not help them grow, will not help them succeed, will not help them develop. So evenly distributing, which goes back, I think, to the point that we said about having the prep work done, right? I don't remember which one was it, but either way, having part of the prepping before delegating is making sure that you're doing a fair distribution of the tasks that need to be done amongst your team. So you're eliminating any room for assumptions or negative perceptions that are not necessary.
Yeah. So
what's the next one, buddy?
Back to prep work. I like the way you mentioned prep work. How about this one? Not being able, you as a leader, not being able to communicate the delegated task appropriately. And that might even be kind of like you end up putting your subordinate or the person working for you into a, hey, keep showing me rocks until you find the correct one. I'll tell you when you just can't tell them what you actually want them to do.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Which, you know what, Georgia brings up, I'm glad this is the third time, I think, or second time in our discussion in the last few minutes, we bring up the word communication, which I want to point out to the listeners. Join in next week because we're going to have an expert in communication, and we're going to actually talk a lot deeper about communication. And keep this episode in mind because you can relate to it and use it as an example when we're talking about the strength and the power and the magic of communication and what it does to what you do day to day. But anyway, back to what you're saying. Yeah, you know what, George? If my manager does this to me, like, it's kind of like, well, what do you think is the right answer? Well, what do you think you should be doing? No. I'm not going to sit here and show you 100 rocks until you find the 99th one that you like or 101 that you like. Tell me from the beginning. Be clear, be concise, be direct in what it is that you want so that we are efficient in using our time and getting things done. Well said, though. I like that analogy that you used. What's the next one, George?
So the next one goes down to monitoring lack of appropriate follow-up for the assignee, right? So, you're not following up right for the actual assignee, meaning you haven't set up that right pattern of when do you get updates, when should you meet up with them, and it has to do with the task of the assignee. If you're micromanaging or maybe giving too much freedom and not supporting them enough, those are all problems.
Yeah, and this goes back, and for people that want to understand this point more, listen to the previous episode, episode 6, that talks about the different types, levels of follow-ups and control that you should have on things that you delegate, and it will link very well to this point, right? How do you monitor? How do you follow up? What kind of support should you give? It will matter a lot what task it is for. Good. So I'm glad you brought that one up, George. Next one. What do we have next? Not liking how it is being done and undermining your team. Yeah. So this one takes a lot of finessing and emotional management. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, yeah, but it's demoralizing, right? You ask somebody to do something, and you go and you check up on them, and instead of having a conversation about what needs to change and why, and doing it in a positive or a teachable moment, you just undermine them. You just sweep the rug from underneath their feet. I mean, come on. What lesson are they going to learn from that? That they're incompetent, or that maybe they should do the job right and wait for you to do it instead?
And you know what, George? This goes back to point number 5, exactly what I was talking about. You gave me something to do that you did not prep me for, or prep the environment for me for to do. First thing that's going to come to my mind is, if I go back to you with my tail between my legs, you're going to be like, what the hell is wrong with you, Mo? Why did you do this? You failed. That's exactly what I mean. That's the paranoia that builds in the employees' minds that you should, as a leader and a manager, erase. That should not even be a point, like something that someone should think could happen to them at their job.
That's terrible. So like, listen, Mo, this is the last one that I want to bring up for today. And there's probably many, many more, right? So, I mean, there's probably a lot of them. We might sit here and talk forever about them. But the last one I want to bring up, because I think it's important, because it doesn't allow people on the team to learn. And this is the one. Failure to provide feedback, debrief, and review results, and collect lessons learned. If you don't do that, your organization is going to forget more than it learns. And if you want an organization that does things better, you should be providing debriefs, getting feedback, trying to figure out what should happen better, and get your lessons learned.
Which is what? The power of reflection. Reflect on everything that happened so that you do get those lessons learned. Take all the actions of your team, good or bad, think about it, reflect on it, because what happens then, it turns into an experience. It turns into an experience that everybody can learn, either do again or avoid doing again. This was really good, George. I think this episode it's one of my favorites. And I encourage people, do yourself a favor. If you've already listened to this one, go back and listen to the previous one, because it will make sense when you fit those two pieces together. But a lot of good points covered today, a lot of do's and don'ts for managers to do. In summary, reflect, prepare, be clear, concise, and positive with your team when you're going through and maneuvering delegation. So I don't think I have, I'm trying to think, I don't think I have anything else to add, George. This was great. And like I said, please plan on listening to the next episode. We're going to bring in communication. We're going to have a guest speaker that is an expert in the art of communication. She will share a lot of insight, and we will ask her questions to dig in deeper into her thoughts about communication and bring out the best in her so that hopefully it can benefit all of you. George, thanks again, man. Thanks for all the examples you shared. This was exciting. I think this might win us the Oscars someday as a documentary. Who knows? No, but in all seriousness, thank you. Anything you want to add from your end, buddy?
No, I'm actually really excited about the next episode and our special guest to talk about communication. And unfortunately, Mo, I think that's all the time we have for today. So I'm going to wrap it up.
Good.
So thank you Thank you all for listening to this episode of Back to Basics on the Business Edge, brought to you by Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and welcome any feedback you have for us, including suggestions for future topics.
Thank you all, and see you next time on the next Back to Basics podcast. It's been a pleasure. Take care, everybody. Thanks, George.
Awesome. See you next time.